Okay, last time we were talking about what the Tibetans call Chakpa, and it's changing the direction of your life. And we were putting it in the context of the Four Noble Truths. I was talking about suffering and what causes suffering. And we basically got to the what causes suffering, which is it's an ego, it's like a schism that's created in the mind, where because everything appears to our consciousness, and I shouldn't, consciousness refers to not only our mental consciousness, but we have eye sense consciousness, ear sense consciousness. We have six consciousnesses. It's the consciousness of seeing, the consciousness of hearing, the consciousness of tasting, touching, smelling, and then there's a mental consciousness. This is different. It's something different. In Buddhism, it's different than the sense organs. You know, we have an ear sense organ, a nose sense organ, a tongue sense organ. They're talking about the consciousness, the thing of that organ. So this is when Buddhism is talking about consciousness, it's talking about the whole package. So as our consciousness observes its object, it appears as if to us, as if everything exists out there externally from its own side. It is an external thing that's not connected to the internal me. For instance, you know, Molly is not me. Molly is something out there, you know, with her own body, her own thing, her own external independent being. This is the way our consciousness has perceived things. And they say that this whole samsaric experience we have generated, and we have generated it to have this appearance. It's very helpful these days with current neuroscience and the current views of quantum physics. It's helping us a lot to see kind of not to actually see, but to logically understand that it's not quite that way. That the way things are appearing to our various consciousnesses is actually occurring not out there, but it's occurring within. It is in a way you could say it's non-dual, and which is what Buddhism is trying to get to, is this idea. Manjushri is trying to get to this wisdom of non-duality. It's not subject and object the way we normally think of it. But what we have done is created kind of a schism in our mind, thinking that I, this consciousness that I consider I, exists sort of separately and independently from everything else out there, which is objective reality, is the way we think of it. This is objective reality, and it's out there, and I'm sort of separate from it. What this does, and Brian, you were quite correct. This still falls in with the nature of interdependence. Everything is interdependent. What happens though is because the ego, say the I, feels as if it's somehow separate from everything else, there is a sense of being, I don't know if bereft is the right word, but needy. I need what's out there, you know, to make me feel complete. In other words, the ego does not feel complete thinking, oh, this is all interconnected and this is all a non-dual experience and blah, blah, blah. The ego doesn't think that way. So it's a schism. It's a wrong view, the way they put it, a wrong view. And out of this neediness, this comes this desire, this grasping attachment for what is going to make me happy, what I want, what I need. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And as soon as we can't get that thing, as soon as something gets in the way of us getting that thing, we experience a sense of aversion, like, no, this is not what I want. It's like a little kid who, you know, the two kids are playing with toys, and one of the kid takes the toy, and the other one goes, mine, no, mine. There's aversion that arises. There's an upset that occurs. This has occurred for all of us. This is what the ego is about. So what we're trying to do is, through the wisdom wing, through the wisdom teachings, sort of get into this and see how it's actually working. We've been reading, Kavita and I have been reading Gen Lamrimpa. This is called Realizing Emptiness by Gen Lamrimpa. And I'm telling you, any book on emptiness written by qualified teachers is going to appear as if it's written in code. You know, you'll look at the words and you just will not understand what's going on. And which is why Omarapatanavi, Omarapatanavi. The Manjushri mantra is very, very helpful because it kind of is training your mind to, think, all right, I can do this, I can work it, I can understand this. And actually over time that is occurring. I'm finding that beginning to happen. So Kavita said something really funny the other day. In Star Wars where Princess Leia goes, "Help us, Obi-Wan, you're our only hope." Kavita's going, "Help us, Gen Lamrimpa, you're our only hope." And it's like, yes, but not all of this. I guarantee you, if you open this book, you'd go, "What?" But I'm going to read a few things which I hope will clarify what I've been just describing and talking about. And what the main point is that they say is that everything, including the self, everything is conceptually designated. It depends for its existence upon conceptual designation, which sounds like craziness to us. If you think of, we'll go back to the famous cup example.
Yeah.
If you think of a cup, right now, we just take it for granted. This is a cup. This exists from its own side. This does its thing. I have nothing to do with it. It exists. However, if you actually begin to analyze, the cup was somebody's idea. The idea of, we need to hold liquid, right? So somebody then had an idea of, a concept. How do we make the perfect thermos cup? And what material is this going to be made out of, right? So this actually exists due to conceptual thought. Now, our use of this and our view of this is all conceptually designated. We sort of place on top of this all the concepts that it kind of stands for to us. Oh, this is a cup. This is a thermos cup. You put the liquid in there and it will stay hot or it will stay cold and has a little top that stays on. We are putting onto this, they call this the object of designation.
Right.
The object of designation. We're putting onto this object all the meaning that it has for us. And conventionally, in our society, we agree that this is what it is. And so it exists through conventional agreement and conceptual designation. If you were to pull all of the conceptual designations away from this object, for instance, if you were to pull your consciousness away, if you had no mental consciousness and you couldn't think, say you were like an extreme Alzheimer's, someone with Alzheimer's, and I don't even know what that's like, but just as an idea, you look at this and you have no idea of anything, nothing, no idea of anything, right? That's actually the way it is. It's nothing. It from its own side, it has no anything. This cup does not know it's a cup. It doesn't know its function. It doesn't know the color. Say you take away our eye consciousness, we no longer can see it. Take away the sense consciousness, we no longer can feel it. It's only the consciousness itself that is able to grasp and experience. Like what we read last week, it's Christoph Koch, I think is his name. And he says, his quote, Christoph Koch is a physicist, and he could say, without consciousness, there is nothing. The only way you experience your body and the world of mountains and people, trees and dogs, stars and music is through your subjective experiences, thoughts and memories. You act and move, see and hear, love and hate, remember the past and imagine the future. But ultimately, you only encounter the world in all of its manifestations via consciousness. And when consciousness ceases, all of the consciousness ceases, this world ceases as well. He's kind of saying something very similar to the Buddhist teachings on emptiness. It's us. It's us who is making this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's us who is conceptually designating it. I'll tell you, if you get a whiff of this, one night we were reading Gen Lamrimpa, and I was staring at the curtains on our wall, on our windows, and thinking, all right, that's just an object of designation. From its own side, it's actually nothing. So I was looking at, the color and the patterns are describing things that my conceptual consciousness is all putting together and going, oh, that's very nice. It was made in India, and that's a tree, that's a bird.
Mm-hmm.
From the curtain's own side, there's none of that. None of that has any of that meaning. It's all conceptually designated, and it comes into its existence for us through the conceptual designation. So, and through that, because of our ego self-grasping, we'll have things that will go, I don't like that. That doesn't work for me. I hate this particular color, or I hate that flavor, or I don't like that person. Where somebody else will go, I love that person. I love that color. I love that flavor. I love that style of, architecture. This is why we have all different views. It's because we're the ones making the decision about it, not the thing itself. The thing itself doesn't have any meaning. None. And all right, so now let's see if I can read this thing that he said about a flower, which Kavita and I just went, oh. And maybe you'll go, oh, too. And this it is hinting towards non-duality, and the reason why it is so important for us to do these purification practices that Nagarjuna is talking about. The purification practices of our actions, of our speech, and of the way we think. If we can purify, it's going to change the way we are conceptually designating and judging and viewing things. So here's what Gen Lamrimpa says, and this is at the very end of the book. To make one final comment, when I speak of the dependence of physical objects upon sensory awareness, like what I was just talking about, I am not suggesting that a flower, for instance, is dependent upon any particular individual's awareness. It is dependent upon sensory awareness in general. The shape of the flower, the color of the flower, the smell of the flower, your mental conception of whether that's a pretty flower or not a pretty flower. All of that, he's saying, that's depending on sensory awareness in general. But it can still be said that the flower that appears to your awareness is dependent on your awareness. If you examine this issue very closely, you are led to the conclusion that the world that appears to you actually does not appear to anyone else. Think about that. It's each one of our own personal sense consciousnesses and the way our mental consciousness makes decisions about it. This is why I said, for some person, they hate, I hate red wine, give me white. And somebody else will go, white wine, that's for sissies, give me red.
Right.
That all is occurring here. Has nothing to do with the wine itself, any of that. So, if you examine this issue very closely, you are led to the conclusion that the world that appears to you actually does not appear to anyone else. This implies that the world that each of us lives in is in fact produced by our own sensory awareness. This has a direct bearing on the issue of what's called pure vision in Buddhism. By the very process of purifying one's own mind, the appearance of the world is also purified. This is how we do it. This is why this practice that the Buddha gave, it's the very initial practice. It's like clean up your mind. Clean up your actions based on your mind. Clean up your speech based on your mind. You know, so get the right view and then have that move into everything you do. And the world that you experience is going to transform. This is actually how we go through the stages of the path of a bodhisattva, all the levels, all the bhumis, all the way up to the vajrasattva state just before complete omniscient enlightenment, where non-duality completely goes away. And we recognize the non-dual, completely interconnected nature of everything. But we have to start with our own view. And that's the little addendum I wanted to add to last week's. So he says, in this regard, we say that the whole world arises as the result of maturation of one's habitual propensities. And what we want to do is mature those habitual propensities into things that support interdependence in a very healthy way, not in a psychotic way the ego does. You know, just like me and everything else out there, and I want what's for me, and damn with anything that gets in my way. I mean, just look at the world. We talked about this last week. The history of the world, this just keeps cycling around. It doesn't change. We're the ones who have to change. We're the ones who have to do it, and it starts with our own view, because this is the only view we have. The world that appears to us is our own view. So it's very profound. He says, in this way, the world is like a dream. And this has been said over and over again. And when you look at, last week I mentioned, I think one of the finest esoteric works of the 20th century is the film, the movie of The Wizard of Oz. And look at how that is. It's about a dream, and it's about following a path to get out of the dream. And the reason is the connection that the main character feels to those who she loves. And she wants to get back to the connection with them and get out of the dream. So we talked about this last week as well, that Buddhas, this is in Shantideva, the Buddhas, it's as if we are in a dream, a nightmare, basically. Samsara, you could say, is a nightmare. With, good parts, some are great, but some of them are really scary. And what Buddhas do, someone who has attained omniscience, omniscient enlightenment, they can step into your dream, step right into it, and find a way to gently waken you up. And that's what's occurring to us. We are gently being awakened. Awakened to our actual nature and the way things actually exist. And so we'll just sort of leave that there. As we develop pure vision, we are going to be seeing a pure world.
But if everything is conceptually designated, everything is conceptually
designated.
Correct.
Right. Including the logic of Buddhism.
We have to use conceptions to get ourselves, exactly. Conception is not necessarily a bad thing. We actually need the conceptual mind to get us out of the state that we're in.
Conceptual mind is what designates what each individual sees, and each individual sees something subjectively. Then how do we know that anything we see subjectively is accurate or correct or not accurate or
That's the
correct?
3 factors.
Yeah, there, oh, boy, that will take too
There's
much time.
a,
There
there
is,
is a actually organized.
there's a, how you figure that
Explanation.
out.
I just wanna point something very clarifying though. We are talking about, when you ask that question, you don't use the word conventionally, but you're saying conventionally, how do we determine if something is really there? More or less informally, you know, that's what you're saying, conventionally speaking, because ultimately speaking, everything is merely designated, everything is. So all you're talking about is conventionally, and there are
Conventional
3
reality.
criteria that must be met for it to be considered accurate conventional reality.
Rather than just
Conventional
you're crazy.
reality. And it's basically, if nobody thinks you're crazy.
We will go over that at some point, but now we need to stop because we're over time, but I do wanna read. Gen Lamrimpa, save us, you're our only hope. I wanna read his dedication that he gives at the end of the book. Let us dedicate the merit of this teaching and this experience we've had together, so that all sentient beings may realize emptiness and attain perfect spiritual awakening. May the teachings of the Buddha flourish, may our spiritual teachers live long, and may all sentient beings experience both temporal as well as ultimate happiness. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any questions before?
I just had one quick question about Vajradhara
Mhm.
and Vajrasattva. Vajradhara is blue,
Vajradhara's blue.
that is our vision. That's what we focus our meditation on, and Vajrasattva comes out of the heart of Vajradhara.
Yeah, and comes to the crown of your
And
head.
comes to, got it,
Vajrasattva actually is representing your
right,
nature.
potential, yeah,
Vajradhara is everybody's potential
Right.
to become a Buddha.
right,
It's like, so they call it the primordial Buddha.
got it. Just wanted to clarify who was coming out of.
Who's who? I know, I know. Okay, that dedication will serve as our closing prayers, our
Thank
closing
you.
dedication, and
Thank you.
have a happy week.